What's up? Welcome to our channel. Today,
Woo.
different topic. We're discussing the Overtrigger. Cat, could you?
Cat
Okay.
says no to that.
Do you hear that?
No.
Okay.
I don't hear the cat though.
Okay, I
I just
think
hear you
yeah.
complain about the cat.
Okay. Yeah, she's doing some stuff. Doesn't matter. Today we're discussing the Overtrigger topic since it got a little bit heated in the Twitter community, and we, as Overtriggered, have to have an opinion on Overtrigger since we are Overtriggered all the time.
Mainly he because he is overtriggered the whole time.
Every
If you
week.
see his Twitter.
Every week.
and
And
most of the time against when we play each other.
yeah, let's say Overtriggered is yeah, it's just Overtrigger. It's two-sided sword. I don't know if
Yeah.
you can say that in English.
Yeah, double-edged sword, you can say.
Double-edged sword. There it is.
Yeah.
Yes.
And and the good part is that we have two different perspectives, because you are the one who mostly gets the overtriggered from others, and I'm more the person who gets the overtriggered.
You drive
So
check it.
yeah.
You drive check it a lot. Okay. We would start with our general opinion on Overtriggered. So do you wanna start?
Well, we're starting about in the current format, you mean, right?
Yeah, generally Overtriggered.
Yeah.
So just a small
Yeah, so the
a
topic
small
started actually.
intro
So
like.
I didn't read the whole article of what was written all with the Overtrigger scenario, but I know some of the things. So it was like more based into these two different formats, like one side for the premium format, one side is for the standard format. And yeah, the real reason why people are more complaining is because Overtriggers are more game changing since we got like set 4 in Overdress, because now more opportunities to have more drive checks enables them more to drive check them. I think one of the more I think there was one article where I saw that there was specifically made for people which were
Sorry.
entering in the tournament, where how many times they checked an overtrigger. And they even had for one specific person a personal list of how many times he checked the overtrigger.
Okay.
And yeah, he was like, he has 85% that he checks the overtrigger in each game,
Okay, yeah, that's
if I saw that.
that's
And I
just
was like,
luck.
what? Yeah, but they made like a mathematical table since I saw that. And yeah, from my perspective, I think the Overtrigger itself is more an iconic into this format, because this is what makes the Overdress format over an Overdress format in my eyes. Without the Overtrigger, though, is more like into V premium, where you have like these basic numbers, basic guarding, but with lesser shield value in this format,
Yeah.
and also a consistency riding. But yeah.
Mm.
And for premium
Yeah.
itself, there's a lot.
Boss,
There we
chill.
can talk about it more.
Yeah, we'll get to everything. We'll get to
Yeah,
everything. Okay, camera. Hello.
but it's more of the issue that the people check more and more the overtriggers,
I
and that's why. It is almost like the same scenario with the critical trigger issue, which they had before they made the change, that you can play only 8 criticals. It is more like into that in my eyes. I can be also wrong, but it depends on the people.
okay. For me, the Overtriggers, it's only play OD. Is like if you check it, it's great. It can damage deny you with damage checking, and this happened to me very often. And I'm now in the state of that I don't like Overtriggers overall. In a competitive state, since it just puts too much RNG into the game overall. But yeah, that's my my opinion right now about OTs.
Yeah, I can
Now,
also agree that when we talk about with the overtriggers in competitive state, yes, they make too much of RNG because these are numbers which you can never get except if you drive check on your own an overtrigger.
yeah.
So I can really much agree on this scenario, but we also
So
need we also need to talk about what you could do against this because yeah, the overtrigger is of course extremely powerful if you drive check it. It is also pretty powerful if you have it in your hand as well because it's almost like a complete perfect guard with 50k shield,
the
and it's
overtrigger is
also
like,
yeah
if you damage check it, it denies you a damage, so it heals you technically in a sense. If you draw
yeah
it, it's like
it,
one guard where
it
you could guard at least one damage. But if you drive check it, it's just too much value at that time, because the drive check
yeah
value is so much higher than the other values that this gets inconsistent. If it would be the same value as you get when drawing or damage checking, then it would be fine. But it doesn't. It can't be too impactful since you only play one.
yeah the
But
thing
I
about
would I would just
yeah
go to next topic where you could also tell me how the OT is in the premium. Because we're gonna talk a little about how the Overtrigger is in the OD format specifically and how it is in the premium, since I don't know anything about premium.
Okay, in premium it is more like a more different scenario because you have many ways of how to stack your overtrigger from a deck. So one of the most annoying parts, which was with the overtrigger, was banned in the I think it was on the September list, where they made a trade restriction between Ultima and and the overtriggers itself, because Ultima had an ability where you just had to have the condition to stride for him. You need to discard the same card name in your hand to drop zone, then you could have ultimate strided. And this made it more like into yeah, his ability was like counter plus 2. You choose 4 cards from your deck. Your opponent can't see these cards, and you call 2 of them, and the rest go on top of your deck. So
Okay,
you could have
okay.
always stacked the Overtrigger, and then he has also another ability, which when you do this effect, he also gains the ability that all the power and the trigger effects, so except for heal, also get the other rear guards. So in this case, if you had the Cat Sanctuary, then you could have just like maybe said like, yeah, you can stand the Overtrigger and then give 100 million regularly to one of your units, and that was the most powerful thing about it.
Okay.
Because the thing is,
And how?
it doesn't share the power with it. It just shares for the other triggers.
Yeah. And how is the uh, how big is the impact of the Overtrigger in the game? Like when you
It
drive check
depends.
it.
It depends on the decks because if you talk about more into the more top meta top decks like Night Madonna and stuff like that, if you get against them in a defensive way, that's pretty good for you because they can't do anything except like
Yeah,
attack, put
mostly.
a card into soul, and rewrite the whole time until they get the overtrigger. So that is one of the few win cons which they can make, or they just pass with like rewriting a grade 2 so that they disable you from striding. But what you can also do is there are also some decks which have the potential of negating an overtrigger. So if we say like Nubatama
Hmm.
has like this option with a card which says you choose one of your opponent's units and 2 of your units, and they get the base power of 11k. And Nubatama has also the ability that you can call them in a mid battle. So there are also some decks which can negate the power of any triggers you can ever have.
Okay, okay.
And for like the effects itself, In Premium, you have like more of a diverse where you can play your deck against a specific Overtrigger deck. Like Dragon Empire, when you play with Mega Colony, then you have like a grade 1 which says when you use this card for guarding, your opponent cannot stand until end of this turn. So your opponent's Vanguard. So you can more likely counter the Dragon Empire or any restanding Vanguard with it.
Yeah. Sure. Oh.
So that is more like into the thing. But yes, Overtrigger is also very impactful in Premium, since not many decks can pretty much play about it, because they just shut down most of the things, and then you need to like, if you are committing like into an aggro play, then yeah, you can't do anything, because you're more likely sticking into that aggro play and hope that he doesn't have an Overtrigger. But for other scenarios where he's like more into preparing for next turn in Premium, then it's more easier for you to play around the Overtrigger. But I didn't play test so much Premium.
Do you really play around the Overtrigger?
When
Or
I
do
played
you,
Nobutam,
since I can tell from playing OD or D format, when you never cause if you play around the Overtrigger, you would PG every single Vanguard attack, depending on which Overtrigger. So is there really actually playing around Overtrigger? Except the opponent got 6 cards left in deck and the Overtrigger hasn't shown. Then of course, then you have to play around the Overtrigger. But at the start of the match where everybody got half full deck at least, can you even play around the Overtrigger in Premium?
okay, there's my light gone.
Yeah, it's fine.
So when you can play around the Overtrigger, yes, you can play around the Overtrigger. That is not an issue when you have like specific decks which are sometimes also focusing on your hand and stuff like that. So that is one of the things. But if you are like me playing Nobatama and something like that, you can counter an Overtrigger when it comes and you have the okay hand and the okay setup.
Okay.
But if you have like one of the stronger meta decks, then there is not so much you can really do about, since you have like this issue. You need when your opponent has like a damage check Overtrigger, then you really need to somehow get your own Overtrigger to even do something. So what people can really do is like more into these, going deeper in your deck by rewriting your Vanguard and go for it. And for defending against an Overtrigger, you need to know that in Premium you have more abilities to have more perfect guards, since there are also these gift markers, which one of them has like the protect, which says it's just the perfect guard on your hand.
Yeah, I
Without
saw.
upgrade.
Yeah, I
So
saw
that is
some
one
of
of the
them.
things
Yeah.
you also need to keep in mind.
Okay. Then I would like to tell something about the OD format Overtrigger, since I get it regularly, like every week,
I would
twice,
just
thrice.
do my
Yeah. So, for example, a little bit of storytelling. When I played Morikawa tournament 3 weeks ago, I went in and got overtriggered twice in the same in the first games in the tournament, and lost to that. So it was already sure that I wouldn't top, which is not the reason behind playing tournament. It's just to show you the picture I have of the Overtrigger. Then next week I play again in the same tournament with almost the same people, and again I get Overtriggered twice at the beginning, and I get damage denied twice in a row, and where I needed the damage actually. So I saw the perfect example of getting crushed by Overtrigger, and in the same game getting your damage denied, which you needed by your own Overtrigger, which is more rare, but it's still a possibility. But it's almost the same with heals, but if you have literally no damage, then you can't heal, the Overtrigger can. And then after that, I played 2 weeks after that in a bigger tournament from Morikawa, and I got overtriggered thrice in 4 games, and not any overtriggers. It was one times the dark side overtrigger with permanent crit, and one times the low row with permanent 10k power to each rear guard, and one times by the vanilla overtrigger when Bruce attacked in his final rush turn. So you could imagine how well how well I did. And
Yeah.
that gave me the realization, when it hits you, it just hits you, so you can't do anything about it. And that's the biggest problem in OD, since if there's an overtrigger, there is like, yeah, overtrigger, okay, GG. Like, the turn is like, you know what will happen this turn, and you know probably what will happen next turn. Since if I check an overtrigger with my Gravidia deck, I have double crit everywhere and infinite power almost. Like, either he can guard everything and has no hand, or I just win. And if he guards everything, next turn I win, since opponent has no cards in hand. So it's... if you check an overtrigger offensively, it's just GG to 80%, 90%, something like that. And that's just not a competitive state. And that's a perfect way to get into the next topic, since I wanted to talk about the state of the overtrigger in a competitive environment and in a casual environment. Since, as I already said, in a competitive environment, the overtrigger is like too much RNG, since it just finishes the game and it tends to one side, except when both players drive check them offensively, or if he gets a perfect defensive overtrigger, and then it's then it I can't speak anymore. Then it evens out. No, that's what I wanted to say.
So more like into evenly matched.
Yeah, it's getting evenly matched.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
not a Yu-Gi-Oh reference, by the way.
And that's such a small chance that this will happen, that it's not a competitive environment anymore. It gets to a more RNG based factor, and what I love about Vanguard is that it's so consistent overall. And in short notice, then you can talk about your opinion about that too. In a casual standpoint, it's pretty easy, amazing. There is nothing better than the overtrigger for the casuals. Like, that's the best thing they could have done to get more players, of course. So since it's explosive, it gives you a huge comeback, and casual games are generally more not one-sided. Like, if there is nothing like, yeah, next round I'm gonna beat you for sure, since they are casuals, they don't know everything about every deck and don't know how everything will play out. So there is never this point where you can say, yeah, I could just scoop, since I know if I don't check now a heal as a damage check, I will lose or something. So they're just thinking, what will he do? And there is every overtrigger like explosive, and it makes fun, and just great for new players.
Yeah, so I can really agree with you. So for like an casual environment, the Overtrigger is perfect, because it is more like an explosive thing where you can experience more vibes with it, and that is pretty good for a casual environment. But if we talk more about the tournament environment, it is pretty bad, since there's so much negative environment about the Overtrigger, which can completely deny a turn, that is for sure. But if we are talking about like a little bit of changing with an Overtrigger, that could maybe more like into working with it. Like, I was thinking to maybe like host a tournament, like an overdress format, but with a little bit of twist. So like, we don't say, so every time you get like 10k, so like 10 million power.
What do you mean now? I couldn't follow.
Yeah, Speaking of the Overtrigger environment, if we say it in a competitive state, if we would change it for a competitive state, when we'll say like,
Change the
okay,
effect.
yes, changing
Okay.
more like the power effect, because the power effect is one of the things which make this it's impossible to do. Like, if I would change the Overtrigger, I would have tried to host a tournament, which I will be doing in my locals shortly, where
Nice.
I would be saying, when we play the tournament, the Overtrigger, including the effect, which also gives 100 million to a unit, even by an additional effect, gets short by 50k, so like 50,000. Because this would, of course, reduce the more into stopping the whole turn,
No,
and
it
also
would,
give the same shield value.
so that I can follow you instead of the 100 million
100
you
million.
get 50k.
Yes. Because this would also go in the same direction with the shield value, and you will have a more diverse gameplay about it. Because if we just say it just gives 10k to any unit and has the additional effect, that wouldn't be so pretty broken in my eyes. And if they want to follow it a little bit more with the Overtrigger, then I think this 50k would be a little bit more the way to go for in a competitive environment.
I think
If I
50k
would change.
is, yeah, it's also a good point to count the
Well, it is an
power
easier
creep.
count. Yeah.
Yeah, because of the power creep, however Vanguard will go with the ORS format. 10-20k would be maybe too short,
Too
but
less.
yeah, too
Yes,
less.
for a one-off.
Yeah, sure, but right now I would say 20k would be perfect. Like it's like a double trigger, and then with the skill, it's already big, but it will get less and less with more support and with more power creep. So yeah, you're right.
Yeah, surely.
Maybe 50k
I
would be
think
good.
50k is more like into this midpoint, because then it also goes even with the shield value, where you can say it's a little bit better and stuff like that, and it wouldn't make so enormous numbers that you can say I just need to end my turn. And if you play something like Magnolia or something like Flagberg, where just one trigger weakens the whole turn, then it doesn't even matter at this point. And
Yeah.
for other decks, if you think like Bastion, where they have the Refusers and like these restanding boosted units, then this one will still compensate, or like the Bruce build will also still compensate with it if you have a little bit more into the power-ups, because you're more like into these Cell Plus full dives, or also my Bruce build, where I also go over these numbers. So I think that is a more better solution to change the Overtrigger power like this, and then it would be a little bit better. Because if you say like, yeah, I play Brandgate in a tournament and I check it, then yeah, double the power, so that's 200 million.
Yeah.
How would you like to count that?
Yeah, the same would be then with the 100k. Since Brandcat doubles, it would be more than 100k. But if we switch that, let's talk about how we would change the different effects, since some overtriggers will just not be relevant anymore then. Since like
Yeah,
the dark state.
you can also say like with the elemental cray. The elemental cray could be like, it's the same, giving like 50k to
Yeah,
another
and
unit
another
as well.
50k.
So that
Yeah.
is more like into the basic. But
But
yeah,
how about
if
the
we
dark
would
state?
change the
Or
dark state,
generally, what do you think about permanent overtriggers? Like right now, lyrical overtrigger and dark state, since they are staying the whole game.
to be honest, I played so many against Lyrical Monastery and also with the Overtriggers, where they checked it. I also played against some of them on stream, and it's more like a testing curve with the 50k, but I think the 10k for like decks which don't get so much support except for the other 5 nations, I think that is still an okay thing to stay the power with it, the only thing what you can more talk about when we have like these changing numbers, then it's more like how the ratings of these overtriggers will go from like the best overtrigger to the worst overtrigger. Then there's like more meaning to go into like the dark states overtrigger or something like
No, but
the others. Yeah. But I think if we say like with the permanent overtriggers, some of them are pretty good to convince. Like the dark state is in my eyes still an okay one because most of the time you would get PG'd if you play Baron Magnus and you have the overtrigger there. So that is the one side to take. But if we talk about the lyrical, it's more like a different thing because if they get more Nero support and the more Nero support is like more into the multi-attacking, then yeah, then the overtrigger will be too powerful. But in a free attack format where almost every lyrical deck has, I think that is a little bit more fine. Also,
I
by
think
Laura is also attacking for 5 times, so that's
yeah,
one thing as well.
I think if the lyrical overtrigger would have been just for one turn, not for the whole game, it would be totally fine. Since
yeah, but the thing is, if you think like that, then some of the decks itself will be a lot weaker with it. Like if you say,
well, technically there is no weaker since Overtrigger changed the whole game flow. If you check it, it's like great, doesn't matter, you can count in the Overtrigger in your usual game plan. Overtrigger just
yeah, but
happens. That's also a
yeah,
thing.
but the thing about overtriggers in general, like in lyrical, is they just have this one overtrigger like the others. So
Yeah, sure,
if
sure.
if you like think more into the overtriggers in general, like the lyricals with the other 5 nations, then of course the lyrical has by some of them more value than like the others, like
Yeah, but
Ikea
that's the
or
same
something
with
else.
the other Overtriggers.
Yeah.
Like the Dark State
So
casual, the Dark State Overtrigger is also not that great in Bruce like the Vanilla Overtrigger. They're like
yeah.
evened out, but the Lyrical got right now 6 decks and all the other nations only have 3 right now, with Buff Sagura, the Rank Empire 4. So
Mhm.
it's not, there is not enough variation, but there are still overtriggers like in Hexa Orb where the overtrigger isn't that great like in Bastion. If you don't play as many great frees as Bastion, then it's also not, you can't
Well,
abuse the overtrigger to the total.
the thing about Hexorb is they can stack the overtrigger. That's also a
Yeah,
thing
of
you
course,
need to
of course. It was
to
just an
concern.
example. Let's say Phantom Blaster Dragon also doesn't play that many great frees. So it's the same, like your rear guards have to be grade 3 that you get full potential of the overtrigger.
Yes, of course,
Like
it
they
makes
will,
more sense. Or
yeah,
if you have like a Blaster Dark which gets a drive check more, so that is also a thing.
yeah, there will also, there will be always a deck that can abuse it better than the other, because
Yeah.
that's not, that's not
What you
really the
can
point
also
I
make.
wanted to say. The
Yeah.
point I wanted to say is that the effect is so strong that you can push so hard and every turn so hard that it's just not sustainable against that. So that's in my opinion the strongest overtrigger in the whole game, since it gives you so many resources. And when I played against Lyrical, when they check the overtrigger, the thing they do at the end, they just call down triggers, since the triggers standalone get to 30k. Just triggers. Only triggers, not even any rear
Yeah,
guards. That's just
if you
stupid.
call two triggers in the same column, then yeah, of
Yeah.
course. Yeah, the lyrical thing is yes, they have like this overtrigger itself, but the more meta reliant ones don't have a weakness, which is like building a board that you also need to concern about. Because in Laurel, you're more likely trying to get as much value as possible, and you don't have that much of a draw engine itself. That's why you don't have that much issue with the hand by Laurel. The only issue is like
Yeah, rear
you play more
guards.
orders. the more you play more orders, and then you have lesser rearguards to call by. So in this scenario, yes, if you drive check the Overtrigger in Laurel, great for you. Your rearguards get more beefy. But I also played sometimes getting Laurel, and when I played something like Blackberg, they can't keep up even with the Overtrigger because I always retire the rearguards.
Yeah,
So
when I
most of the
play with
time,
I play with Gravidia against Loro, and I always retire every rearguard, and they still won since that was the play when he called down all the triggers and just swung for game, and that was actually then the win condition since he got no hand after that, and I died because I couldn't guard the heavy columns.
yeah, that is always the thing.
Like
It
there,
is
of
Vanguard though.
course, yeah, it can happen. The thing is, I want to say is if you check it early, it's like crazy. If you check it on your fourth turn, it's either way just for 1 or 2 turns then, since after that you will be dead, since the game doesn't last that long against Loro, or different decks, angels and stuff. They also can hit very hard. Just got the problem with the permanent 10k on each rearguard. It would be fine if they would just say it's for 1 turn and the Vanguard gets also, so every unit on the field gets plus 10k for this turn and that's it. That would be amazing.
Yeah, yeah. Then you also need to think like more of the other decks where they also like a little bit more swing first with the rearguards, like the Clarissa
Yeah,
deck, where you just swing with the
Clarissa,
rearguard,
even
and
low
then
row
yeah,
does that.
it's also yeah, and then if you
Sure,
think like if they
but
have the order and then they just swing with the rearguard first because they have the possibility to restand, and then you attack with your Clarissa, and they what I also did, Perfect got all the 3 attacks, and then he got like the Overtrigger, but no standing
yeah,
rearguards.
but
And of
that
course, then it would
balances it.
loosen the deck.
That balances it out, since you don't get it for the start of the turn. When you overtrigger, when you get the effect the turn before, and then you can swing first with your rear guards, and then with your
Mhm.
vanguard, then you have much more value. But if you only get it when you attack with your vanguard, and then the others restand and stuff like that, then it's fine in my opinion. The other way
Yeah,
around
but
is too strong.
yeah, but the thing is, if we say it would be for 1 turn, then I would be the one who says I won't play the lyrical Overtrigger because the Trey Elemental Overtrigger is much better in this scenario when
Yeah,
it's
that's
just for
true.
1 turn.
Yeah, it gives you
So
100 million to
then
do.
then you will lose the value of the Overtrigger itself if it's just for 1 turn.
Yeah, let's see how power creep goes with the
Yeah.
new with the next sets we get. Maybe the Overtrigger will be bad in a
Yeah,
year.
yeah, yeah, we will see it more,
Yeah,
but I will say it for sure. The Brandgate will be a staple forever.
yeah, Brandgate is just crazy. There, if this happens with the change to 50k, I even think the Brandgate needs to get nerfed. Like either doesn't double the crit or doesn't double the power. One is enough in my opinion. I think it would be even fine if you, let's say, just double the crit, but I'm not really sure about that. Just double one
Mhm.
thing, because if you double 2 things, it's still a massive overtrigger.
Yeah,
If
true
only
though.
50k, cause one lane will get 100k or the Vanguard, depending on how the opponent guarded, and then doubles everything. And let's say standard 13k, it will get to 26. At least
Mhm.
with a booster it's then 30k. If you persona road you will be on 46 without any boosters, and that's a big number, and then double crit.
Yeah. So the thing about the Brandgate Overtrigger is more like how can you balance it out? That is the hardest question for this one.
Yeah, I would say just
So
cutting one effect, either crit or you could decide. That would be amazing. You can decide if you want
at the
to
side at the
double the
side
crit
effect of
or yeah, or double power.
yeah, you can maybe think about it like that. Then you can think like, do I want to more into the damage deny or do I just want to swing for more power?
Yeah.
So that is one of the interesting factors, which maybe Fushi sees that video.
Yeah, I don't think so.
I also don't think so, but yeah. So what we can also talk about, which I was thinking in my head recently, the prices of the Overtrigger.
Yeah, I would keep with the other Overtriggers real quick.
Yeah,
To get them through, since Cater we would say is fine. If we change it to 50k, getting additional drive checks,
yeah,
I
that would be totally fine.
I personally think it would be fine if you would say only one drive check per um what shall I call it, per
Yeah, the
rear
drive
guard.
checks for each trigger.
Yeah, so you don't get
Yeah,
twin
but
drive every time, since Overtrigger is like at least 6 cards in hand. That's Overtrigger in Cater right now in Bastion.
I see Terra has some PTSD against Bastion.
Hey, you just get 6 cards. Like that's also the
Well,
same when the same thing if
well, if you
you
play ba
if
well,
you
if you talk about Bastion, yeah, then you will need it, of course. But if you play something like Hexa Orb or Phantom Blast, where you don't have these grade 3s, then yeah, you balance it out because you have lesser grade 3 value. But in
yeah,
Bastion, you
of
really
course.
need to.
But what I
Or
wanted to say, very similar Overtrigger is the Dragon Empire Overtrigger when you check it with the Grade 4. That's 6 drive checks. That's exactly the same thing actually. So it would also be maybe a good idea to drive -1 at the restand after that. Maybe.
it's more of a debatable
But
because the thing
since
is when you give it
drawing 6 cards is
then
crazy. Well, drive
yeah, but
checking, not even drawing.
yeah, but if you think about with the drive checking, yeah, it could balance out some things. Then you have like lesser value in the early turn, like in the grade 1 or grade 2 turn, where you swing with it and then you check the overtrigger. Then you will have, of course, a lesser value out of it. But of course, for the longer term stand, it's of course a pretty good change. But for the early game, it's more like a harder nerf because then you
Yeah,
lose like one more card value.
yeah, but Overtrigger is losing value in Overtrigger is the thing we want.
Yeah,
Or not.
true.
Yeah, since it's just way too strong. And Stoikea Overtrigger is just simply every trigger in one. It gives
Yeah,
front, it
it's
gives
every trigger.
crit, it
It
gives
heals
heals and draws.
and draws. Yeah.
Yeah, but
So it's just every trigger in one. But the thing is, in Stoikea itself, depending on which deck you're playing, you're more varying of how your playstyle is. So like in Magnolia, you're more into how you want to play it with the Overtrigger. You want to have a more beefier lane where you have like at least 3 or 4 attacks where they have the Overtrigger numbers, or you just want to have at least 1 or 2 Overtrigger swings and get more resources out of it. So that these are the things you need to concern about, because for the whole past of Magnolia itself, you were more debating into playing the Cray Elemental one because it gives you more
yeah,
value out of it.
yeah, Magnolia, especially Fleckberg also. Sorga
Yeah,
does like the standard Overtrigger, the Stoikea Overtrigger.
yeah, because it
But
gets more value out of
yeah,
it.
but that Overtrigger is actually one of one of the Overtriggers I like the most, and is somehow not that busted, like never. It can come in clutch, but it's like every trigger can come in clutch, every critical. The
Yeah.
only thing I could say there that would be a subject to change is you either decide if you want to heal or give a crit. Like the front row and the 100 mil, or in that case 50k, is like, yeah, nice. And then the draw comes into it, so you're drawing 2 cards off of that. One from the Overtrigger skill and one more. But yeah, if you could just decide between heal or crit. But overall, it's
Well,
just a solid card in my opinion.
for me, a person who pretty much likes to play Stoichia as a nation itself, I don't actually particularly mind of this change, but then of course, then for some decks, then I would prefer more into the Cradle Metal Overtrigger. So
Yeah, of
that is
course.
of course one thing, and What is also a thing is for the earlier Sorghum matchups from set 4, then they will just go aggressive into the game 2s
Yeah, but
on the grade 2, so yeah.
that should be fine in my opinion. The Cray Mental is for real not that bad. It's just a good overtrigger.
Yeah.
And I don't think that that should be overseen. Like, that's a solid trigger, and that's it.
Yeah, I would be more interesting to see if we will get more overtriggers in the future.
Yeah.
Because this will be also a deciding factor for deck building itself. Because you have more variety, and also the changes of the overtriggers itself, or maybe some erratas, who know. But for me, an errata between all of my SP overtriggers,
Yeah, it doesn't matter. They won't. Yeah, they will probably reprint, but if you got an SP, you got an SP, so
yeah,
it's fine.
I'm fine with it.
Let's see
But
what
yeah,
Bushi does there, since I don't actually think they will do anything in the near future. Maybe end of this year, if the argument gets more and more heated.
well, I think if we are talking about like predicaments for when they will do some changes, I would say maybe a month before the festival collection comes in the TCG. That is my predicament.
That there will be
Some changes, yeah.
in the OD format.
Yeah.
Okay. Because I don't
So
see
that is
any changes.
That would be my predicament, because set 4 is an explosive set, we all know that, and will give some power creep, because if you see the pile shots, you know which decks are topping right now.
Yeah, but
And of course they said it also in an older article that the metas were expected like this. We can also say that.
what?
Because that was at set when set 2 came out. They said it's how they predicted, where they also changed the triggers itself.
They predicted that the meta will be Seraph and Magnolia
No,
Nova.
no,
What do you mean?
or the meta into the Bruce Bastion.
Oh, okay. Yeah, for sure, yeah.
So these were more the predicaments what they had. So I will see if set 4 was also a prediction for them, if it's like this. But yeah.
Yeah,
We
hype
will
for
have
set 5.
more in the future.
Let's see what they will give to us.
Yes.
So, do you have anything more to say? Otherwise, I would close the video right here.
Not in particular right now.
Okay.
Since we talked about the other formats, then we did the changes.
Yeah.
We can maybe talk about the prices more itself for the overtriggers, or like how it's called, how much we can value a little bit more about it. But that is of course more another story, and also
Yeah,
more
that's
into
another
the market watch.
Yeah, that's a bigger topic to round it up. Yeah, I would round it up right here. If you stayed here, what should they write? What hashtag in the comments? If anybody watches this long for 40 minutes, Jesus.
Well, you can cap and say free soul and predicament.
I don't even know how to write that.
No. We're cool, Solemn, don't worry.
Yeah, write hashtag OTG for Overtriggered into the comments if you really watch this long. And
also, if you're watching this video right now, I'm also live streaming after this video goes up.
I think it will take 2 to 3 hours if you go live streaming.
Yeah, I will more streaming on the night, so
yeah, check this boy out. So thanks for watching, and don't get overtriggered.
Yeah, don't get overtriggered, except in our channel. Bye.